Egypt is a place that's widely known for holding some of the world's most intense mysteries. There are even conspiracy theories stating that aliens helped to build many of the things within the country because so many of them just seem impossible for humans to have built that long ago. You wouldn't believe some of the things that have been found in Egypt, both buried underground and just sitting on the surface of the sand. Here are 15 of the strangest things ever discovered in Egypt. Number 15. The Ancient Solar Boat. The Ancient Solar Boat, also known as the Khufu ship, is an intact, full-size solar bark from ancient Egypt. It was sealed into a pit at the foot of the Great Pyramid of Pharaoh Khufu around 2500 BC, which was during the 4th dynasty of the ancient Egyptian Old Kingdom. Like most other buried Egyptian ships, it was likely entombed in sand as part of the extensive grave goods intended for use in the afterlife. The Khufu ship, however, is one of the oldest, largest, and best preserved vessels from antiquity, and has been identified as the world's oldest intact ship. As mentioned, it's a solar bark, which were the vessels used by the sun god Ra in ancient Egyptian mythology. He was said to travel through the sky on the boat, providing light to the world, and the Egyptians copied the design in order to attempt to mimic the same thing. The history of the Khufu ship in particular is not exactly known, but it's said to be one of the greatest masterpieces of woodcraft ever built. Number 14. Mysterious unfinished obelisk. Within a stone quarry that was active all the way back during the period of the Romans, there have been some incredible obelisks found that seem to have never been finished. These stones were absolutely massive, defined as monoliths due to their absurd size, and are separated into 2 sets of 3 for a total of 6. The first 3 were part of a podium wall in the Roman complex of the Temple of Jupiter Baal, and are widely known as the Trilithon. Each of these stones is estimated to be between 750 and 800 tons. Keep in mind that Egypt was, at one point, part of the Roman Empire. The remaining 3 are Roman monoliths, which means they're not part of a larger structure and were instead meant to stand on their own. The smallest, but most well-preserved, is known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, estimated at around 1,000 tons. The other 2 are the Stone of the South at around 1,250 tons, and the largest of the 3, the Forgotten Stone, estimated at 1,650 tons. These are, in reverse order, the first, 3rd, and 5th largest known stones ever quarried in human history. Number 13. A Lost Golden City. 3,400 years ago, one of the most contentious ancient Egyptian kings abandoned his name, his religion, and his well-established capital in Thebes, also known as modern-day Luxor. Archaeologists know what happened after that. The pharaoh Akhenaten built the short-lived city of Akhetaten, where he ruled alongside his wife Nefertiti and worshipped the sun and its god Aten. After his death, his young son Tutankhamun became ruler of Egypt and left his father's legacy behind him. The answer as to why the king abandoned his capital may lie in the discovery of an industrial royal metropolis within Thebes that Akhenaten inherited from his father, Amenhotep III. The find, dubbed the Lost Golden City of Luxor, is indicative of a period of extreme wealth and power. Akhenaten, however, upended the entirety of Egyptian culture during his rule, abandoning the traditional Egyptian pantheon aside from the god Aten. Unfortunately, it's currently unknown as to why Thebes was abandoned and not simply remodeled, but hopefully over the coming years, people will be able to figure it out through diligent study and understanding of the Golden City. Number 12. The Town of the Tomb Builders. The massive tombs of the Egyptian pharaohs and other positions of royalty are widely regarded as some of the most splendid burial sites in the world, with a ton of work being put into each one. The pyramids required many thousands of men and several years of work in order to be completed, and often benefited very few people. What isn't talked about very often, however, is the fact that the people who built these tombs needed a place to live. Having to walk several hours from different cities to the build site would have been inefficient, and therefore the pharaohs in charge at the time would often set up temporary cities for these people to live within. One of these cities was recently unearthed and provided a good look into how the people lived. They seemed to have relatively basic lives, with only a few necessities within their home, as they spent most of their working hours on the tombs. When they were finished, they were even given their new house or allowed to return home, depending on the pharaoh and the site they were working on. Number 11. Secret tunnels in the pyramids. Archaeologists have recently discovered several secret tunnels underneath various pyramids within Egypt, with one of the most prominent being underneath the burial site of Khufu. It was a 98-foot tunnel detected via cosmic scans that could very likely lead to the emperor's burial chambers, which have yet to be found. Excavation near Egyptian pyramids is very strictly controlled because any collapses could lead to losses of millennia worth of priceless goods and artifacts. Let alone the history that's lost with it. It would be a terrible loss for something like that to occur. So different technology has to be used to explore and search for new things like hidden tunnels and chambers. The Egyptians were widely known for having secret tunnels in their tombs, which makes it all the more enticing to go search for them. They were likely put there to allow the souls of the spirits to exit the tomb, because the afterlife was such an important aspect to ancient Egyptian culture. Number 10. Secrets of the Sphinx. Nearly everyone knows about the Great Sphinx of Giza because it's one of the most recognizable landmarks in the world. It's existed for around 4,500 years and is one of the largest and oldest statues still standing in the world. Despite this, many people actually don't know the purpose of the Sphinx or why it was built. Archaeologists believe that the head of the Sphinx is meant to be in the likeness of the pharaoh Khafra. The Great Sphinx is actually just one of many of these statues that were built throughout Egypt, but the others were smaller and gradually crumbled over time. They were built as protectors of the tombs and burial grounds that they faced, and considering the Sphinx of Giza faces the pyramid tombs of Giza, it makes sense that those tombs are what it's guarding. After the Sphinx was built, over the course of the next 1,000 years, it fell into disrepair. The entire body was covered in sand, and only the head could be seen. Legend has it that a young prince named Thutmose fell asleep near the head and dreamed vividly that he'd become the pharaoh of Egypt if he could restore the Sphinx. He did so, and did in fact later become the ruler of the country. Number 9. Mysteriously colored sarcophagi. The recent discovery of a massive necropolis has only fueled curiosity towards Egypt, and the mysterious sarcophagi within are incredibly enticing. Egyptian archaeologists recently discovered more than 80 sealed coffins in the ancient city of Saqqara, which is a burial ground also home to one of the world's oldest pyramids. These 80 coffins were in addition to 59 sarcophagi that they'd found in the same location only a few days prior. In the photos and videos released by the authorities on the project, the discovery showcases a finely painted sarcophagi, which is incredibly unusual as the paint usually wears away over the years, as well as a collection of colored and gilded wooden statues. The coffins appear to be around 2,500 years old and have not been opened since they were originally closed by the ancient Egyptians. This would mean that these sarcophagi were sealed during Egypt's 26th dynasty, and although researchers will probably open them sooner than later, it's astonishing how many marvelous things managed to remain hidden in these eras of exploration by modern humans. Number 8. The stone that broke language. The Rosetta Stone is perhaps one of the most important ancient Egyptian relics in the world because it unlocked the ability for researchers to read Egyptian scripts. The stone is inscribed with 3 versions of a decree issued in Memphis, Egypt in 196 BC during the Ptolemaic dynasty on behalf of King Ptolemy. The top and middle texts are in ancient Egyptian using hieroglyphic and Demotic scripts respectively, while the bottom is written in ancient Greek. Because the text was the same in all 3 scripts and ancient Greek was well understood, it became the key to deciphering the Egyptian scripts. The stone was carved during the Hellenistic period and was believed to have originally been displayed within a temple, though nobody knows for sure. It was eventually used as building material in the construction of Fort Julian near the town of Rosetta in the Nile Delta. It was found there in 1799 by a French officer and was the first ancient Egyptian bilingual text discovered in modern times. Without this stone, it's very likely that we never would have been able to decipher ancient Egyptian writing at all. Number 7. Temple of the Giants. Abu Simbel is a historic site comprising 2 massive rock-cut temples in the village of the same name, located within Egypt near the border with Sudan. It's situated on the westmost bank of Lake Nasser and is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, known as Nubian Monuments. The twin temples were originally carved out of the mountainside in the 13th century BC during the 19th dynasty reign of the pharaoh Ramses II.
A look inside the temples of Abu Simbel will make it pretty.
They served as a lasting monument to the king and his wife Nefertari, as she and his children can be seen in smaller figures by his feet. The temple commemorates his victory at the Battle of Kadesh, and the huge external rock relief figures have become iconic. The complex was relocated in its entirety in 1968 as part of the international campaign to save the monuments of Nubia, under the supervision of Polish archaeologist Kazimierz Michalowski. The relocation was necessary, or they would have been submerged during the creation of Lake Nasser, the massive artificial water reservoir formed after the building of the Aswan High Dam on the River Nile. These temples have stood for a very long time, and it will likely stand for thousands of years to come. Number 6. Underwater Burial Ground. A burial ground and shipwreck, both over 2,000 years old, were recently found in the sunken Egyptian city of Tanis Heraklion. Generally referred to as Tanis by the Egyptians and Heraklion by the Greeks, the city fell into the Mediterranean Sea after a series of earthquakes roughly 1,000 years ago. Recreational diving is not allowed at the site, but research divers and underwater archaeologists have been allowed to excavate for new artifacts for some time. The underwater scouring recently revealed the wreck of a fast gallery, an ancient kind of boat propelled by oarsmen that spanned an impressive 82 feet long. Discovered with this boat, though, was a burial ground home to possibly hundreds of bodies, all buried in the city before the flood. It's rumored that spectacular ceremonies must have been carried out within the city, and the city was supposed to have sunk sometime before the 4th century BC because no artifacts have been found from after that date.
Before we go on, do like this video, smash that subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face while you're sleeping.
It's time for today's subscriber pick. This photograph was taken by a drone camera that was allowed to fly through the secret tunnels of one of Egypt's ancient pyramids, though nobody knows for certain who the drone belonged to or even who published this picture online. It appears to be some sort of Anubis-headed creature, perhaps even some sort of the embodiment of the god itself, angrily chasing after the drone. This makes sense. Technology like that absolutely didn't exist in the times of ancient Egypt, so the creature probably thinks it's some sort of weapon intent on destroying the pyramid. The drone was destroyed, with this picture being the only thing recovered from it. What sort of creature do you think this is? Could it be Anubis himself, or some sort of reincarnation of an ancient being? Remember to comment down below with the hashtag subscriberpick and let us know what you think. Now, on to the next topic. Number 5. The Tomb of the Silver Pharaoh. The royal tomb of Pharaoh Susinis I is one of the most spectacular of all the ancient Egyptian treasures, often thought to be almost as remarkable or even on the same level as that of Tutankhamun. However, it's much less well known than the Boy King's tomb because the Silver Pharaoh's was discovered at a much less opportune time in the world. It was unearthed in 1939 when the world was on the brink of a Second World War, and the excavation of the tomb barely made the papers, whereas King Tut's had made headlines decades earlier. The world was more focused on the impending war than on the tomb of someone from thousands of years ago. It's unfortunate, but it's the way things had to be at the time. One of the most spectacular discoveries inside the crypt was the exquisite silver sarcophagus of Pharaoh Susinis I, who was a fairly unknown ruler who governed Egypt more than 3,000 years ago, during one of the most difficult periods in its history. As far as we know, this is the only time a pharaoh's mummy was ever entombed in silver. Number 4. Temple of a Lost God. The Temple of Bastet is one of the main cult temples of the goddess Bastet in the Old Egyptian kingdom, which was associated with fertility and often acted as a protective deity. Originally, Bastet was depicted as a lioness, though later on, her appearance would be refined to be more similar to that of a common house cat. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Per Bastet in the 5th century BC, despite other temples being larger and more well-decorated in appearance, none was more beautiful than the Temple of Bastet. The temple was lined with 2 beautiful channels filled with water, with trees planted around their edges, giving a beautiful view of the city beyond. Eventually, most knowledge about the goddess Bastet was lost or destroyed, though oddly enough, not much is known about why. All we really know is that she was a fairly well-revered goddess up until the point where many writings about her were lost. Number 3. Farmer finds mysterious tablet. A farmer in northeastern Egypt was preparing his land for crop planting when he discovered an intricately carved sandstone slab that appears to have been installed by the Pharaoh Apries roughly 2,600 years ago. The slab measured nearly 8 feet tall and 3.5 feet across, and featured a carving of a winged sun disk and an oval enclosing Egyptian hieroglyphs representing Apries. After the farmer who found the slab reported it to government authorities, the director of the Ismaila Antiquities District and other archaeological experts confirmed its authenticity. The tablet is rumored to be connected to a military campaign that the pharaoh was raging in the east of Egypt, and it included 15 lines of hieroglyphs that experts are hurriedly working to translate. It's very uncommon for normal citizens to find artifacts from ancient Egypt so close to the surface. Generally, they're buried quite deep within tombs or other such structures. This truly was a unique find. Number 2. The bones of whales in the desert. Nobody here would be surprised to be told that whales generally live within the ocean and don't ever come up onto land. That's kind of their whole thing. They're the largest mammals in the world, but are unable to exist on land due to their massive bodies, and therefore evolved to exist within the water where it's easier to support their size. And that's just the thing though, whales evolved from a mammal that used to live on land. And because of this, there are fossils of whale-like creatures in places where they absolutely aren't supposed to be. That includes the deserts of Egypt, where massive skeletons have been found in the sand that bear all the features of our favorite ocean-dwelling mammals. This is paired with the fact that some other sections of these deserts used to be completely submerged in the ocean, and therefore the animals had easy access to the water. This is likely what allowed them to eventually evolve into the ocean-dwelling creatures, rather than staying on land where their size would have eventually been limited. The proximity to the water allowed them to rest inside it for a little while relaxing their limbs, which eventually led to their evolution. Number 1. The Valley of Golden Mummies. The Valley of Golden Mummies is a huge burial site at Baharia Oasis in the western desert of Egypt, dating back to the Greco-Roman period. It was discovered in 1996 by Zahi Hawass and his Egyptian team, and approximately 250 mummies were found that all seemed to be about 2,000 years old. Most of the mummies were still in excellent condition and were decorated in different styles. There were 4 general styles of mummy found at Baharia, and the first style comprised about 60 of them. It included a beautiful golden mask covering the face and a gilded waistcoat depicting scenes of gods and goddesses across the chest. The other 3 types were not as fanciful, but still included large amounts of gold. All of the mummies were buried with artifacts, often including even more gold, which is what led to the colloquial name of the site. The artifacts discovered there, paired with this history, make it an almost priceless find. Which of these things do you think are the strangest? Do you think we'll ever be able to fully uncover all of the secrets left behind by ancient Egyptians? Tell us in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps us to understand what kind of videos you want to see more of. Smash that bell icon if you're always looking to learn new information, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.